the modified one that came with the textbook, which I don't do very often, but we're going to go ahead and do. So this was our objective yesterday. We talked about, or last class, we talked about understanding the purpose of hard drive. The biggest purpose of the hard drive is what, Lane?
To store stuff.
Store stuff. What's the biggest stuff that it stores that we use as soon as we turn it on?
Programs.
I'll say that's the second thing. The first thing that we see as soon as we turn it on? Operating system, right? So the purpose of the hard drive is to be our permanent storage, to hold our OS, our programs, and our data, okay? The first of which has the biggest impact on speed. Programs and data, if you got a slow hard drive, it's going to slow us down a little bit, but our OS, if we got a slow hard drive, is going to slow us down a lot. And obviously, if our hard drive goes bad, this is the one that we're going to cry about, right? We can always reinstall the OS, we can always reinstall programs. But if we only have our data in one place, on one hard drive, then it would be catastrophic, right? Which is why we have, you guys have H drives, teachers have T drives, because those things are backed up every single week, actually every single day and every single week, so that if you lose something, we can get it back. A regular user at home can't do that. I've had administrators before that didn't keep their stuff on their T drive and then lost everything and then said, "Can you get that back?" I'm like, "No, I can't. You didn't put it anywhere that I could get it back," if the hard drive is truly catastrophic. Anyway, so the purpose is to hold our data, our programs, and our operating system, okay? So some things that I want to make sure we understand too is understanding the difference between physical size and capacity. So when you guys looked at hard drives, did you guys notice there's a difference in sizes when you look at them physically, when you guys have seen them before, okay? Right? We've got this one right here, and we've got, let me grab one, there's got to be one right around me somewhere, and we've got one of these right here, right? They're totally different in size, and the two don't mix very easily, okay? So we've got two physical sizes of hard drives. We've got ones that are listed as 2.5 inches and 3.5 inches. Okay, so when we talk about physical size, 2.5s are traditionally laptop drives, and 3.5 are, I'm going to say PC / server / regular PC sizes. Okay? Doesn't mean they can't mix, right? I showed you that bay the other day that I could take one of these and I could put it inside of something to make a 2.5 fit in a 3.5, but the other way is never going to happen, okay? Lane is never going to fit this inside his laptop. If he does, he's done great damage to it, right? So 3.5s are physically different in size than a 2.5. Laptop drives and solid state drives are almost always this size, okay? But oftentimes, if you want to buy a solid state drive, it may come with a bracket that makes it into the same physical size as a 3.5. So physically, there's some different sizes, but then we look at capacity, and capacity is the biggest size that people talk about, and that's how much does it store. Okay, so when you talk about the sizes of a hard drive, you may be talking about physical, or you may be talking about capacity. Both of those are sizes of a hard drive. You have to make sure the physical size fits the, what's the magic word that we talked about back in chapter 1 that starts with an F?
Form factor.
Form factor, look right away, okay, right? It's got to fit the form factor of the device you're putting it in. So if it doesn't fit the form factor, you said that so fast, it makes me so happy. Came right to the top right. So it's got to fit the form factor, so it's got to be the right physical size, and then we have choices of how much capacity, and really as part of form factor too, how those connect. So those are the two sizes of hard drives when we look at them. Okay, so these are 3.5 inch hard drives, and these are the two different ways that we connect hard drives. And we talked about those last class. What are those two ways, the two cabling methods?
PATA and SATA.
Okay, right. So here's PATA, and here's SATA. Okay, PATA's got that big 40-pin connector with that ribbon cable. Has a different looking power plug. SATA has a ribbon cable, and this SATA has both the old connector and the new connector on it, which is really nice because then whichever plug I have free, work. So I've got different ways that they cable, and that's part of the form factor too. It has to physically plug in to our PC as well. This is just showing SATA versus PATA or IDE. The same kind of plugs exist on laptop connectors as well. If you're using a laptop anymore that has IDE, which we had, and we're basically throwing them away because you're so stinking slow, and you can't even get a solid state drive for an IDE without it being the cost of a laptop almost. I mean, they're ridiculously expensive because nobody makes them anymore. So you pay so much for that hard drive that you might as well have just bought a whole new laptop, and you'd be in much better shape. So those are just showing the two different connector types, and this is showing those cables as well. And I know I'm kind of going too fast because we went through a lot of this. So with the IDE or PATA connector, and I said this last class, because there's two things on that cable, there's what's called the master-slave relationship that we used to have to set up. You're not going to have to do it in this class. You're just going to have to know that exists. If you, for instance, had a older computer that you wanted to be able to replace the hard drive in, I'll be honest, I would never replace a PATA hard drive anymore. They're just too cheap for SATAs. And if you bought a PATA hard drive, it'd be old and it'd be refurb anyways. SATA hard drives are really easy to connect. It's just one single connector. It's got a little L notch, if you could see that in there. You can only put it on one way. You got to look before you plug it in, because you can try to put it in the wrong way, in which case you would end up breaking the hard drive. Okay, so when you look at that connector on the back of a hard drive, you need to look and see which way the L's going on both the power cord and the data cable. The data cable is the smaller of the two. Make sure you pop it in the right way. Okay, connecting them is easy. With the case of the older IDEs, you had the ribbon cable that went into the motherboard. That also only went in one way, and frequently students messed that up. Do you see the cable out there that I had the other day? I didn't put it away yet, it's gone. On the end of these cables, there's, if you look at it, there's a notch on one side that's supposed to keep you from putting it in the wrong way. But there's also that one spot where there's not a pin right there. If you put that in the other way, you're going to smash down a pin and ruin the motherboard or the hard drive. Okay, that happened about every other year. Somebody just cram it in there, because all of them don't have these little notch things there. Some of them are just completely flat, and it lets you do it wrong. So with the PATA connector and the IDE cable, we talked about this the other day, that the speeds, max speed went up to 133 megabytes per second, which is how we talked about it. We never talked about it in gigabits, but back then, up with the fastest ATA connector, and it was called Ultra, but really then we started calling PATA, because it used to just be called ATA because there was no SATA, it was late PATA. So it went up to the max speed of 133 megabytes per second, and then we already talked about the newest SATA ones are up to 600 megabytes per second. I already showed you the cable. There's different kinds of these cables, by the way. Some of them, they all have 40 pins, but some of them have 40 wires as opposed to 80 wires, and the one with 80 wires transfer data better or faster. Okay. Again, we're not going to use it. I hate to not cover it at all, because if you ever saw that cable, but you're not going to see it here. The SATAs are easy. They have a specifically different power connector. That was weird. And a single cable that connects up to the data. Now, a lot of times on PCs, there aren't enough of the SATA power connectors. And if that happens, it's not a big deal. They make adapters for 99 cents that lets you take, I'm trying to find one of the adapters I'm looking for, let you take the old Molex connector and just plug it in. They're the exact same power. It's still a 12 volt power. Okay, so you can just buy one of these on eBay for 99 cents, plug it in, that's fine. Okay, you can also do the opposite. If you've got a bunch of the other kinds, this adapter takes a SATA power and turns it into two Molex powers. So sometimes people replace power supplies when they don't need to, because they make those nice little adapters. Anyway, so it's really easy to plug in. You obviously have to have the power too. When we put in hard drives, I will tell you that is the biggest got you, is that frequently they put in the data cable and they forget to connect power. Okay? At the end of the year when you guys do your final exam and you're troubleshooting a PC, it could be as simple as the power is disconnected and that's why the hard drive doesn't work. Okay? It's also possible that the whole power supply is bad, therefore not giving power to this cable and it's plugged in, but it could be power that's not making the hard drive work. That's just a picture of the two backs. We've just looked at them, but you can see there's a Molex power and there's the 40-pin connector and there's a regular SATA power and the SATA connector right there. And there's, obviously we looked at the motherboards the other day, there's our IDE connectors on there and there's our SATA connectors. So our PATA connectors and our SATA connectors. New motherboards, I haven't seen one with an IDE that I bought for a while. So when we hooked up PATA, there were usually two PATA cables, a primary and a secondary cable, and on each of those cables you could have a master and a slave. Okay, so if I plugged in the operating system, I would want it to be on the primary master because that's what it's going to look at first by default. Okay, and instead of sharing this cable, usually what we do is if we only had two things. In most systems, we used to only have two things. We had the hard drive with the operating system, and then we had a CD-ROM. The best speed we're going to get is to let them both have their own cable and both be masters. But you could plug in 4 things with an IDE configuration. And in order to set that master-slave relationship, they had jumpers at the back with these little brackets that you'd have to put over the jumpers like that in order to say, okay, this one's the master and this one's the slave. And they had little diagrams on the hard drive. It would say, I'm gonna put that one hard drive. It would say right here on the hard drive how to do the pins. There were pins just like that, and you just put a little jumper over, and it would say to make it slave, do this. To make it master, do this. So that's just kind of showing what the jumpers were for. And then I already said that we try to connect the master to the primary, and then any other drives on the secondary. Okay, we started talking about this the other day. We've got one or more platters, almost always more than one platter, that spin together in uniform. We've got read and write heads that move across those with an actuator. I've got a nice picture on here. And each side of them, it reads and writes to, and those are divided into tracks and sectors, which I've got a good picture here in a second to explain how that works, okay? And it writes from the outside in, so just like a CD-ROM, if you did, or no, the opposite of a CD-ROM. CD-ROM writes here out, this writes here in. Why would it write on the outside first? Guess? Because the read head's not on here, right? On a CD-ROM, it's sitting over top reading a CD. On a hard drive, it's coming from the outside in, so it's obviously going to get more things faster that are on the outside track than having to go all the way into the inside. So it writes here, and it writes in as it uses the hard drive. Okay? So your data, when a hard drive goes bad, is showing that it could be anywhere. Anywhere on your hard drive. It could be on any of the platters, any of the sectors, anywhere in there. And all it would take would, you could have well, my hard drive works fine, but I can't find whatever. Well, if this platter goes bad, that doesn't mean the other 3 do. You can have one thing go bad, or one platter go bad and ruin your whole day. Okay? When it's written there, I already showed you this, there's an actuator arm that moves back and forth across all those together, and there's a motor in there that moves it. There's a lot of moving parts in a hard drive that can make a hard drive fail. If the little motor, which has happened quite a few times, that moves the actuator arm fails, but the motor that spins the drive doesn't, it doesn't work anymore. The motor that spins the drive fails and the actuator doesn't work anymore. And this is just showing how you can have many heads moving across there at the same time. So on a hard drive, and this is a physical hard drive, okay? On a physical hard drive, there are tons of little file spots for files to be stored. Okay? It's not like it stores it, here's a big spot, you use this. There's tons of little ones, and it divides all those things up into little sectors on your drive. So think of it, this is a good picture of it, as all these are kind of separate file folders. And if your file is too big to fit in one folder, it can be spread across many, many, many folders. So your file that you just did on PowerPoint could be here, could be here, could be here, and could be there. And there's a file allocation table that says where that file is. You don't read the table, the hard drive reads it on its own, but that table tells it where to go. And the more spread out your file is, the harder it is for the computer to read it and find it and slow to read. So an example of what I'm talking about is if I took the same textbook, if I took this textbook and I've got two of them, and I gave one to Brooke, and the other one I ripped up into 4 pieces and I hid them around the room, and I told Ling where they were. Section 1's over there, and Section 2's over there, and Section 3's over there, and Section 4's over here. Okay? And by the way, you can't pick them up. They have to stay there. And you need to read the book. And you need to read the book too. And the book's a big thing, right? But my point is that Ling will be running all over the room, and I'm only dividing it up into 4 pieces. These pieces are very small. So if your hard drive has its data spread out all over the place, they can be going tick, 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 all day long to read something. When I was in college, worked for Dayton Power and Light, and we programmed a software system called the time of use billing system. I was an intern and was with two full-time programmers. And what the system did is your house got a different power meter and a...
Pardon me, teacher, for the interruption, but at this time all buses are in and students should be back in class.
Okay. So what this did was it took and it plugged into your house, a different meter plugged into your house, and you had this adapter that went in, and you plugged in from a wall plug to one of your phone outlets, okay? And every 15 minutes it read your power, and then every night it reported your usage to our computer through, it called up into our computer and told it how much power you used every 15 minutes. So that you would get charged less than half the power cost if you used it between 5 at night and 6 in the morning. Trying to get you to do your laundry at night and set your water heater back or whatever your usage was, turn down your AC in the middle of the day to try to lower your usage, because as a power company, all the power is in the daytime. And at nighttime, we have generators sitting there doing nothing. They're spinning, we're paying for them to generate power because the grid has to be energized, but no one's using. So if we can get users to use their power at night, then we save money. So every 15 minutes was logged for these 2,000 people that were part of the project, and we had an intern at another site that ran the bills, and it took about 2 hours a day to run the bills and then mail out the bills for this. And about a month into the project, she called us up and said, I'm starting the bills when I come in at 8 in the morning, and they're not done when I come in the next day. So I'm 3 days behind right now in the bills. And the problem was this right here. Because as the hard drive was saving all that data, it got more and more and more and more spread out. And the hard drive is going bonkers trying to read all this data, because you get different data coming in every day. So it tries to add your data to a file that's already there. So then it adds, as it comes in and it goes to add more data, now that spot's free and this spot's free. And then it goes the next day and now that spot's free and that spot's free. And the data gets spread out all over the hard drive to the point that it was taking 26 hours to run what, when we programmed it, took 2. Okay? And what solved this, and we're going to talk about here in a second, is what's called defragmenting. And it takes all those and then puts them together in one spot. Okay. So that's the downside of a spinny drive. There's no such thing on a solid state drive because there are no sectors. It just holds it everywhere and it can read it all at the same time, and it doesn't care how spread out that data is. Okay. So these only exist on a spinning drive. When we set up our hard drive, we've got a number of different ways we can set it up. When we format a drive, you guys almost never format anymore. You know, students used to format all the time. They'd stick in a floppy drive and then have to format that floppy drive. So if I put in a brand new drive, the first thing I have to do is format it, which is all formatting does is it sets up that file allocation table on that first sector, And then as everything's getting written, it says, okay, this file is here, here, and here. This file is here, here, and here. This file is here, here, and here. And so you initially kind of say, okay, it's empty. Here's what kind of hard drive I have when I set up when I format that drive. And to format a drive is really easy. I don't really want to format a drive, but if I go to this PC, and if I were to right-click on here, one of my choices is Format. Okay, and then it would come up. It would come up. What's it doing? Where's it at? There we go. With this saying, okay, this is how big it is. This is what kind of file system it is right now, and I have a choice of different file systems. Not on that big of a drive, but if it was smaller, I'd have a choice of FAT or FAT32. Those are the old ones. NTFS, which stands for New Technology File System, which has been around for 15 years, so it's not really new anymore. And it says how big each one of those sectors is. So it's going to say every single unit is going to be 4,096 bytes big. That's how big each one of those is. So think about it. If you have a file that's just 1 meg, which is a really, really small file, right? A lot of your guys' PowerPoints are 23 gig, right? I mean, sorry, 23 meg. It's 23 meg, and that is how many meg? 4,000 bytes is how many megs? Here, let's do some math, just so you understand that what I'm talking about. Okay, so if you had a file, standard PowerPoint, that was 23 megabytes, okay? That's 23 million, right? So that's 23. And each little sector is that big. How many sectors do we use? And I'm going to use the calculator. I'm not going to even try to do that in my head. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to divide 23 million. Can I get it? Yeah. Divided by 4096. That is on 11,230 different spots on hard drive when I format this. Okay, so if you think about it, if all these aren't together, if they're spread all over the place, and Lane, the CPU, as he's going to open up that file, has to go all over the hard drive to open it. He's moving 11,230 times to open that file. That could be slow. Which is one of the reasons solid states are so much faster, because Lane can just go, here they are, look! As opposed to, here they are, here's one, okay, running all over the place. So, that file size and the number of sectors and stuff matters. So I'm not going to do this. I can also name it. There's a difference between a format and a quick format. A quick format just sets up that file allocation table and says done, because I just said you're empty. And if there's anything there, it just doesn't care anymore, and it'll write over top of it when it uses it. If I don't do a quick format, it actually goes to the whole drive and writes zeros to the whole drive. It just says I'm making sure it's all clean and it all works. It is a good idea to do a full format on a drive that is going to be your operating system. Because that way, if there's any bad spots, it knows and won't ever use it. It'll just go, that's bad, I won't use that again. And if you do it quick, it won't even know. And I'm going to close this so I don't accidentally format my hard drive. That would make me cry. Okay, so when we install a hard drive, we get the hard drive ready. Anymore, we don't really have to worry about jumpers. We have to mount the drive in some kind of a bay in our PC, and we have to use BIOS. It says use CMOS setup, our BIOS program. That's how we set up CMOS, right? To set up the hard drive, however we're going to use it. Okay? If we don't do this step, if we miss step number 4, our computer may not work right. When we do your hard drives, there are different ways in BIOS we can set up our drive. And those ways, the two biggest ways we use, are these right here, as an old ATA or a new AHCI setup. And I have to tell it which one of those I'm going to use. And we use AHCI because it's more streamlined, it's better for solid state drives. And if you tell BIOS that it's AHCA when it's really ATA, you'll get a blue screen and it'll shut down, your computer won't work. And you go, there's something wrong with my hard drive. Or vice versa. You need to make sure that when you install the operating system, you keep it that way from then on. You can't install one way and then switch to the other way. So you kind of decide how you're going to use your hard drive before you install the operating system. And in the case of your guys' drives, I'm imaging and installing the operating systems over there all the time on a different PC that's set up as AHCI. And when we go into your BIOS and set up a new laptop, a student brings in one that's broken, we take one off the shelf. If we forget to swap it, because it also has this on those laptops, we can set up as RAID, ATA, or AHCI. For some reason, the Air Force always used the RAID setup, and we always use the AHCI, so if we forget to move from one to the other, we turn it on, it blue screens and shuts down and reboots, and blue screens and shutdowns and reboots. So you have to do this step number 4, making sure you go into BIOS and set up your hard drive. Which also includes telling you which hard drive to boot from. In my case, I've got 1, 2, 3 drives in my computer. And I have to tell BIOS, this is the one to boot from. Because if I don't tell it that, and it's set to one of these instead, it just won't boot. It'll keep saying, no operating system found, reboot. No operating system found, reboot. So I have to do that step in BIOS to make sure I tell it how I'm using that hard drive. It says take precautions, prepare your work area. The inside of a PC, I cut myself on probably 10 times a year, and I don't want you guys to ever cut yourself if you have that option. These are bent back pieces of metal here, and that doesn't mean they're nice and polished. Okay, and inside here, same thing. It's just a piece of sheet metal that's bent back over, and you can put your hands in there and you can cut yourself good. So when you're working inside a PC, you need to take precautions and do it slowly. That's why I always cut myself, because I'm never doing anything slowly. And I'm trying to get a million things done at once, and all of a sudden I look and there's blood dripping, and it just happened to me when I was doing the video servers on Monday. I'm working on those, and all of a sudden I look down and there's a pool of blood on the table, and my hand's just going boop, boop, because I cut myself at something. So be careful when you're inside a PC. We have to decide where we're going to put our hard drives when we put them in. Hard drives spin and create heat. The last thing we want to do, now on this one I don't really have a choice as I look at this picture, but if I had a hard drive bay and it had, for instance, 3 bays, I wouldn't want to put 2 hard drives next to each other. I'd like to spread them out so they get air in between them if I can. Okay, so if you have a way when you're working inside your case to not put your hard drives right next to each other, that's good, okay, because they create a lot of heat when you're working in there. There's a little picture of what the jumper thing looks like. It says, single drive configuration, what's connected? The answer is nothing, it's just showing pins, so you wouldn't have a jumper on it. Master drive configuration with 2 drives, so you put over those 2 pins, and every single drive is different, so you can't just look at this and say that's how I set them up. This is for an IDE. Slave drive configuration, dual drive, you put it in the middle, and then that's your key there. That means there's a jumper, that means there's no jumper. So there'd be something like that on the hard drive to set it up with the IDE drives, which we don't have to do because we're using SATA drives. So if we're going to mount a hard drive, it's easier if you can, if they have a removable bay, to remove the bay itself. There's a lot of cases that have, I'm going to see, and I always refer to them as the hard drive can. It's not a can at all, but let's see if I have one still sitting over here. Oh, I don't see one down there. There's a metal kind of box that comes out of many cases that you can screw the hard drives into. And you have to take out that box first. In fact, the ones that we just did yesterday, we had to do that. We had to remove the bay. You've got to secure it. If you're screwing in a hard drive, first of all, make sure you use the right size screws, but it shouldn't move. Because these things are spinning at anywhere between 5,400 and 15,000 revolutions per minute, the last thing you want is something in a case that's going to let it rattle while it's in there, right? So you got to make sure you screw it in there. Not ridiculously tight, but it should be nice and hand tight. You can choose to connect the cable when it's in or while it's still in the bay. A lot of times those hard drive bays are hard to get to, so sometimes it's easier just to connect it and then put the bay back in and then connect the other side to the motherboard. Make sure you screw the bay back in. Last thing you usually do is make sure the power is connected and boot it up. It's a pretty easy process to put in a hard drive, okay? And this is showing front-mounted bay of a floppy drive in a very old PC. This is what I'm talking about. A lot of them had these cans that came out that you had to take out the whole thing in order to screw it to either side to get it in. You couldn't get to it from the other side of the case. And then this is showing, we used to have a bunch that were just like this. You slid it in, there was one screw that held the bay in, and then the bay just kind of slides out like that, and then you can get to everything to put everything back in the PC. And that's just a picture showing how you might cable it if it was a PATA, but that's not going to be the case. And then some computers, you almost have to do the bay before the motherboard because they got in the way of each other. The CPU or the memory would get in the way if you're trying to get it in there. If the bay is not the right size for your hard drive, for instance, something like this, to put a 2.5 and a 3.5, or we had ones that we want to put it into a 5 1/4. CD-ROM bays are 5 1/4. So you'd have, just saw one. You'd have an adapter that would let you put a, okay, I'm going crazy. It'll let you put a 3.5 and a 5 1/4. So sometimes, depending on what spots you have left in your computer, you have to use adapters to make them fit. Okay, I've already used both these, but I'll show you the picture on the outside. So this is an adapter that allows you to take a 5 1/4 bay, like a CD-ROM would go in, and then put a hard drive in that bay. This one's actually, it's on my computer over there. It allows me it to be removable from the front as well. Any more with any systems that I'm going to be working on a lot, like servers, I use something like that so I can get to the hard drives from the front. If I want to upgrade a server's hard drive or something fails, I just shut down the server and I pull it right out from the front. I don't have to pull it out of the rack and redo it. So we use those a lot. So you can have a bay, and I said that 2.5 and 3.5 were the sizes, but really 5.25 is the size for a CD-ROM or DVD. So and since we're really talking about drives in general, not really just hard drives, I should point that out too. So those big bays that are in the front, these are called 5 1/4 bays right here. That's a 5 1/4. This is a 5 1/4, and that's a 3.5. There is, on many PCs, there are no 2.5 bays. That's why you always have to use something like this. The newest one I just got for my son when I gave him this Christmas present, because he got a PC for Christmas, it actually was new enough that the case had 2.5-inch bays for solid state drives. This is an old BIOS. I'm not even going to show you this, but just we've looked at BIOSes and we're going to go look at more here later. It's probably good that we're doing this and recording it. Next class is going to be a shortened class, and we're going to start testing hard drives next class and looking at BIOSes. So we're going to start here and go straight over to 210 and test some hard drives. Okay, so as far as troubleshooting hard drives, here's some things that are really quick indications of hard drive issues. Okay, first one is, the easiest one is, to if I go and I check my connections and it doesn't show up in BIOS, I probably have a big problem. Okay, I just had my Samsung Evo 840 on my computer at home just died. It doesn't even show up in BIOS. Okay, I'm going to try a couple things. Whenever I've got a hard drive that doesn't work, I've got some troubleshooting steps, and you know that last slide said experience is the best teacher, but the best teacher is me. No, I'm just kidding. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check BIOS. Okay, if it doesn't show up in a BIOS, I've only got 2 issues. 3 issues that it could be. Okay, so if it doesn't show up in BIOS, can you guess what any of those issues might be? It doesn't show up at all as it being connected.
It's not plugged in.
Okay, so I'm going to say cable. Bad or not plugged in. Either one of those. Okay, so the first issue could be the data cable, and I will tell you that as silly as I thought it was. I was like, how can this cable, which never moves, just sits there with little data packets going across it? How could that possibly go bad? It can. Tanya Plankenhorn, the treasurer's secretary that does our accounts payable stuff, her hard drive just stopped working. This was a couple years ago, and it was a SATA hard drive. And I immediately jumped to the hard drive went bad. It was the first place I went. I replaced her hard drive. I brought the whole hard drive up here to test it. Okay, let me say this. I replaced her hard drive and it didn't work. And I'm like, how could I grab a bad hard drive? It's a new hard drive, right? So then it probably took me 10 minutes longer than it should have to realize that the cable had just gone bad. Because I'd never had that happen before. Never had a cable go bad. So it could be a bad or not plugged in cable. And I have to check obviously both ends. Okay? So that's one. That's a good point. You got another one?
Bad hard drive.
Yeah, it could just be a bad hard drive, right? So the hard drive itself just stinking failed. That's going to be my last choice of these three. I'm going to check the other two first. But yeah, it could just be a bad hard drive, which is the case of my Samsung. I plugged it into every other power spot. I plugged it into other SATA cables, and it still just did not even show up in BIOS. Okay, so the last one I just said. Okay, it could be a power issue. Okay, because I got to have power for that hard drive to work. It could be any of those three things, but it's got to be one of them. Okay, it could be a bad motherboard. My whole computer just cracked, right? But I wouldn't be getting to BIOS to see that it's not there. So really, if I'm getting into BIOS and it's not showing up, I either have a bad cable, bad power, or a bad hard drive itself. And I can test all three of those things. I can try a power plug from a known good hard drive in there, right? I could just pull the hard drive all together and bring it up here and throw it in my external connector, and if it shows up, yay. If it doesn't, boo. Which is why I had to rebuild my PC here the other day, because one of the drives died. Okay, so I've got one of those three things that I can see in BIOS. Now, if I go into BIOS and I see it, it's not one of these three things, right? I see it, it's fine. I know, well, I should caveat. It's not this one or this one. It still could be a bad hard drive. A hard drive can show up in BIOS and still be junk. Okay? So when I troubleshoot, the first thing I always do is to check it out in BIOS. Okay? Then if I've already found the issue, I'm done, right? I got to replace the hard drive or the cable or get a new power supply, one of those three, and then all of a sudden miraculously it works. But if it shows up in BIOS, I have to go to the next step, which is to look at it in the PC and kind of troubleshoot it from there. And I have some things that we can do. Okay, we are going to, next class, use these C-Tools hard drive tester disk, and I'm going to show you how to use a disk to test hard drives. It's a utility just like the Ultimate Boot CD that we use to test memory. We're going to do the same thing with hard drives. It only works on spinny hard drives, but those things we do after we've confirmed that it's showing up in BIOS. We can test it. I have a couple different pieces of software that we can use. We can use the Ultimate Boot CD. We can use that disk, which is the C-Tools, which, by the way, is on the Ultimate Boot CD. The Ultimate Boot CD has like 30 different hard drive testers. C-Tools is the only one that will work on any hard drive. And it's because Seagate bought out so many other companies that they just say, okay, our tester will work on everybody, because they bought out Maxtor, they bought out, what's the other one they bought out? Anyway, they bought out 3 different hard drive companies and continue to expand, so their tester seems to work on everything. We've got the Ultimate Boot CDs, and then I also have, oh my gosh, my mind just went blank, I also have Spinrite. Okay, Spinrite is a totally different program that you have to pay for, and it will go through and do the most comprehensive hard drive test I've ever found, and in general does a really nice job of recovering a bad hard drive. Okay, and usually if I use Spinrite to recover it, I then get it off and put in a new disk anyways if it's in a critical area. The last thing I want to do is keep recovering the hard drive because it's got bad stuff. So I've got some things that I can test once I get it working, but I have to get it working first. Okay, there we go back here. So it does say we want to make backups and keep them current, keep antivirus software, and we're going to talk about defragging files here in a little bit and what we're doing with that. So let's go on here. So we've already talked about speeds a little bit and the different, and this is really transfer speeds when we talked about, right? We know the IDE went up 100 and then 133 were the top speeds, and on SATA we started at 150, 300, and now 600 megabytes per second, or 1.5, 3, and 6 gigabits per second. Okay, big B, little b. Okay, so we've got different speeds, and we talked about that last class. We also talked last class about how the seek speed is important and the transfer speed is important. That speed that we just said is the transfer speed. The seek speed is related to the RPM and the drive itself. And that number doesn't really exist for a solid state. It just knows where everything is. Okay, we said that last class. That's why I said some of this is going to be a review. We talked about and watched the video on solid state drives last class and how much better it is, and it's better because it's low power, because it's faster than all get out. Okay, those are the positives of a solid state drive, and it's impervious to shaking, to impervious to, what's the word? What am I trying to say? It's I'll just say mobile friendly. But what I'm talking about there is that it's not susceptible to movement damage. Okay. However, it has negatives. The negatives is write number of writes. Okay. You can read it as many times as you want to. You can read it 1 billion times, but you can only write to it so many times before it can't write there anymore and it starts to fail. Okay? So, as many positives as a solid state has, the negative is it's not going to last forever. When we look at drives, let's see. When we look at drives on Newegg, I'm going to go to Newegg. See if I can go to a 1 terabyte drive and see if I can find it right away. So there's a 1 terabyte drive. It's got 64 meg of cache. It transfers at 6 gigabits per second. And let's see if it says down here in the specifications what I'm looking for. Doesn't. I'm looking for MTBF. MTBF. Let's see if, no, let's do this. I'm going to put MTBF in there too. See if I can find one that has MTBF on it. On the page. You're not going to see it's ever on a solid state drive. Okay, let's see. Specifications. Okay, down here, I found it in the thing. Tell me if you see it anywhere on here. MTBF. There we go. Delivers MTBF of 1.2 million hours. Okay, so what does that mean? So on a regular drive, it's not how many writes, it's saying how long it will last. Okay? An MTBF. Yes? Yes?
Are you using Michelle Massa?
Yes.
No.
I'm sorry. I waited and waited and then I started teaching. I'm missing Michelle Massa, by the way.
Okay, I got her phone call number.
Okay, I'm sorry. I kept waiting and then I started teaching.
Thanks.
Okay, MTBF stands for mean time before failure. Okay? So it's an average, right? Mean time before failure. Now, and this number is in many ways an artificial number because it's based on laying the hard drive lab technician putting it in airtight facility with no vibrations and doing a test and saying, wow, as good as this did, I bet you it'll last 1.2 million hours. Okay, 1.2 million hours. Let's go to the calculator, John, and see what that means. Okay, if I say this is going to work 1.2 million hours, 1.20000. That's how many hours. So how many days is that? That's 5,000 days. How many years is that?
There's 50,000 days.
50,000. Okay, sorry. 50,000 days. That's 136 years. Let's say that hard drive will last 136 years. You will be dead far before this hard drive is. Is that a real number? No, because obviously they couldn't test that hard drive for 136 years because we'd all be dead before we could buy it, right? It's an estimation based on lab testing. But if someone gives me an MTBF, they're saying it's going to be going after I'm dead. And I like to see an MTBF on a drive if I'm going to buy it for the server in particular. Yes, I know it's not a real number. It's a real estimation. But if you're estimating that it's going to last 136.9 years, I think it'll last the 10 that I might have it in a server for. Right? So, and honestly, I generally only leave hard drives in for the length of their warranty in server drives, which is usually on a good drive, and I'll bet you this one is 5 years. Let's go back to Newegg and see what the warranty is on this one. Warranty on this one is, it doesn't even say. End of product life on this one, so there's no
Do you need
warranty.
to go to the warranty and returns tab?
Maybe it'll show there. That's, no, because this is the Newegg warranty. This is not the, this is saying you can return it to Newegg probably for a year. I doubt that's the warranty for this on Seagate. I can Google that. I'll probably spell warranty. I did, but that's okay. Let's see, how long is the warranty? 3 year. 3 year limited warranty on this one. That's surprisingly short for most of them are 5, 3 to 5. I'm never going to buy one that's not 3. So you can't trust the warranty data that's on any sales site. You really want to go, when you do your presentation, you're going to want to go and actually read the specs from that drive to see what the warranty is. So this one's a 3-year warranty, and if we could read any of this, let's see, we could see what warranty is the longest. I'm sure it's on here someplace. Configuration sector, power on hours. So it's saying annually it's planned on you having it on 8,760 hours. Is that the year? Let's see what that, how many days is that? 8760 divided by 24. Yeah, so same. That you can have it on all year and never turn it off, and that's what they're planning on you doing with this industry level hard drive. I'm looking for something that says how many years. Ah, there we go. Warranty. 5 years, 5 years. Well, that's weird, isn't it? Because it just said 3, but it's really 5. The two things don't match up. But that's okay. That's what I expected it to be 5 for this kind of a drive. Okay. So anyway, MTBF, that's one of the things that you're going to see on those. There's some other ways they rate hard drives, but those things don't exist for solid state drives. They exist for a number of writes, and you'll hopefully, when you do your research on your solid state drive, you'll actually find how many writes it's good for. Our Moodle drive went down last summer, and we put in an RMA with Seagate with that, and we were just under. We'd only had it for 2 years, but we were just under, and it was a 10-year warranty. We bought a 10-year warranty solid state drive, just like the one we just got for the new systems. But that 10 years doesn't mean anything, because in a solid state, it's the number of writes, not really the amount of time. Basically, what they're saying with the 10-year warranty is you'll get too many writes way before 10 years, and we only let it. The warranty is only good for the number of writes on it. Okay, so this is where I wanted to talk about disk defragmenter and what fragmentation was. I've already said what fragmentation is. Let's see if I have my picture next. There we go. Fragmentation is when your file is all over your hard drive. Okay. Contiguous is when it's all together. Okay? Contiguous is good, fragmented is bad. And we have some ways that we can fix that pretty easily in Windows. Now, the Windows XP defragmenter stunk. Windows 7 defragmenter was okay. And I haven't actually tried the Windows 10 defragmenter because I used something else. Let's see. Defragment and optimize drives, right there. So I'm going to go and look at, see how long this takes to open. I'm going to go and look at my drives on my computer right there and see how fragmented we are. Okay, so I'm going to go to this data drive and I'm going to hit analyze, and it's going to tell me how fragmented the drive is. 0%. Wow, that's amazing. Let's see what this one. 0%. And that's not limited. I'm going to go to remote desktop. I'm going to go to one of our server drives. Let's go to Trail 4. That's your student drive. I'm not typing. It's doing nothing. Still doing nothing. Are we doing nothing? What's going on here? No, I don't know whether I actually got it or not. I'm trying to. Okay, we're going to look at, this is a 2008 R2 server that holds all of your student data on it. And we're going to go and do the exact same thing. Let's see, I don't even know where it is on this one. FRA, there we go, disk defragmenter. And let's see, there's our shares. We're going to analyze the disk there and see how fragmented this drive is. And I will show you why I think the Windows one stinks. Because it has a tendency to say that things aren't fragmented when they are. Let's see if I've got the... There we go. This is the one I actually use. Because it gives me more data, although I just got an ad, never got that before. I'm going to go to the shares, and I'm going to say I want to analyze this one. Okay, so just so you know, green is unfragmented, red is fragmented. Okay, so it's saying 12% of this drive is fragmented, and the Windows one is still trying to figure it out. Okay, not as good. Okay, and the other thing I get from this fragmenter, which is free, is I can click on any one of them and see what's on that. So this sector right here includes portions of all of these files. Okay, and it also lets me, well, I thought I did the shares one, that was my OS. Let's see what this one says it is. So obviously I could defragment my OS. I won't do that. The reason I won't defrag my OS is because this one is on a solid state drive. You don't ever defragment a solid state drive. It causes needless writes and doesn't increase your speed, because even if the files aren't together, it doesn't matter, it reads it faster. This, however, is a spinny drive. It's only 1% fragmented. That's not that bad. I actually have defragmenting running every week, so that's just happened this week. And it lets me see this file. So this file right here is broken into this is the worst file on the thing. It's broken into 391 portions. Exists in the varsity, in the publications folder, varsity football, and you can see that's where that file exists, all those different places. Okay, so this one exists all those places, this one exists, and if I want to, I can close that, thank you. I can go and just defragment single files with this if I want to, or I can do the whole thing. So if I wanted to defrag, I could just defrag that file, and then what it's going to do is it's going to find all the pieces of that file, it's going to read them all. Maybe it won't let me. The other one I used lets me do the individual file. This is actually doing the whole drive. So what it's doing right now is it's going and finding all those files, and it's moving them so they're all written together. That's what defragmenting does. And this one's really fast. In fact, I should close this one altogether. See, look, it said it was 0% fragment. There's no fragmentation, is what Windows says. Well, that's correct. It was fragmented, right? So all those files now, it's basically going around the drive and it's saying, here you are, I'll put you all together. Here you are, I'll put you. So when we had that problem at Dayton Power and Light when I was there, as soon as we defragmented the hard drive, we're back to 2 hours. And so we started a routine that she had to start it defragmenting every Friday when she left. By the way, she got paid more than me to print out the bills that I wrote the program to make the bills. Because she was an audio engineer and I was a programmer, and engineers at Dayton Power and Light at that point automatically got paid more because the word engineer was on it, even though she was an audio engineer. Couldn't get an internship with that, so she was basically our secretary, getting paid more than me. I didn't have any bad feelings about that at all. She was getting $3.50 more an hour than I was to print out the bills and put them in envelopes. Anyway, so that's what this is doing. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. We don't need to watch it doing, but it's going through and it's taking all those files and making them all contiguous, so that when next time it goes to read it, they're all sitting there together, as opposed to being spread out. And that's not bad at all, right? I mean, we could go to some drives and you'd see it much worse. I'm actually surprised mine's fine. Windows 10 may be defragmenting in the background. Maybe that's one of the things it does. I actually haven't read anything on Windows 10 on that, so I don't even know if maybe it does. Windows 7, and you can see these older server versions definitely did not defragment. It's one of the things Linux does, it defragments in the background. So that's one of the reasons it can run faster. So that's fragmentation. It's just basically getting all those file pieces put together, and it's going fast enough. I'm going to leave it going while we go back to our discussion. Okay, so that's what fragmentation is. And you guys can download that. By the way, if you ever want to download that particular one, there's a couple of them, but this one, all you have to do, have I ever showed you guys 99 before? Okay, so there's a website, www.ninite.com. Okay, and I didn't spell that. Is that an N or an M? We'll find out in a second. Nope, that's not it at all. Okay, try it again. ninite.com, and I will tell you that Mr. Anderson is the one who put me onto this site. I love it now. It's fantastic. Okay, so what this does is it lets you add any of these pieces of software to your PC and update them anytime you want to. So let's do it for instance. I know that I want all these runtimes to keep my browser up to speed. Maybe you have iTunes on your system and you want to make sure it's always updated. You could click there. In this case, I'm going to put the AS Logix one on there, which is under Utilities right here. That's the one that we were just using. I use Image Burn. I'm just going to add a couple. Let's see. I always use QPDF. I use Notepad+. Anyways, you could go through and pick any of these that you want to. I use 7-Zip. I'm trying not to install a bunch of new stuff right now. So I could click any of these pieces of software, and I really want to click them all, okay? To say that I want to I click Get Installer. It just did nothing. All it's doing is downloading this one file and putting it in my downloads, which includes all these files, okay? So I'm going to hit Save. And then I'm going to go over and I'm going to run that file. And all Ninite does then is it goes out, and it looks, is Silverlight up to date? Okay, it's up to date. I'm good. Is Air up to date? Nope, it's downloading a new version of Air. And it goes to all these, and it puts them on my computer without going and putting any other adware or spyware on it, and it updates them. So this file now I can just leave in my downloads forever. And anytime I want to come back and see if everything's up to date, I just click that file, and it will again go through and check all those things. And AS Logix is one of them on there that you can get for free. So if your PC at home doesn't seem to be running as well as it did when you first got it, this is the culprit 90% of the time. 90% of the time people go and say, oh, my computer used to seem so fast. Now it really stinks. I need a new PC. And could be your hard drive's old and out of shape and you need a new hard drive, but it could be just that I just need to defragment it. And then I've got the same hard drive running like it used to run. Because just like that file program took from 2 hours to 26 hours, your computer, by getting fragmented, could take way longer to do everything too. And if you've never defragmented your computer, this is one of those things that can't hurt anything. You go home, install ASLogix, and defragment it tonight. And your mom might go, "Oh my gosh, Lane, what did you do? The computer runs so much better." Okay, or your dad or whoever it is, your little sister. And you can see it doesn't take that long. This one's already done. And now all the files that were broken in, there's no fragments of any files. They're all together. Okay, so that's what ASLog, and you just have to pick the file, and this is a little tiny drive. Pick the file and then say, I want to defragment that one. I'm going to defragment this one. Oh no, I just said that's on a solid state drive. I don't need to defragment that one. Stop it. Not thinking. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to log off that one. So that's one of the tools that you have. And 9.9 is a great way to get it. It's just a fantastic tool because now, anytime I'm on a PC, I can just click on the 9.9 thing and it updates everything that we downloaded for that PC all at one time. And so it went through, it's already done, right? It's gone through all these things. Those are up to date, and some of them it installed on there because it wasn't there before. Like ASLogix was not online before, was it? No, we looked at the Windows 10 one, which said I was not fragmented. So let's see if this is a true statement. It said none of these were fragmented when it looked at it before, and it may not be because it's a new drive. No, see, it's still fine. It's not. It's 4% fragmented. This one's very empty, so I'm going to let that go and come back to it, since I haven't actually looked at it. So that's fragmentation. That's one of the things we can do to increase the speed of our hard drives. Okay. So also some other things that we can do to fix our hard drive if things aren't working right. Okay. Not only can we defragment it, that file allocation table on our hard drive can get messed up so that it's not pointing the right places. So if I go to that same file explorer here, and I'm going to look at this PC, and I'm going to go to my C drive, okay? So I can right click on there and go to properties, and one of the things I have now is this tools right here. And I could do an error check on that hard drive to have it go through and thoroughly check out that hard drive. So if I, you know what, I'm not going to do it on that one because it's solid state anyways. I'm going to do it on this D drive. Let's say properties, tools, and I can do error check. And when I do that, I can tell it I want to scan the drive. This one looks different than the one on Windows 7. And I can have it go through and automatically fix errors, which is what this, I haven't done it on Windows 10, so I'll be interested to see if it has to reboot or not. On Windows 7, you had to say, hey, I want to automatically fix the errors, and I want to scan it and recover any bad sectors at the same time. If you did that and hit start, it usually would say, hey, I can't do this right now while you're running. Can I do it next time you restart? And you say yes. And then next time you restart your PC, it does a full scan of your drives. This is a good thing to do every once in a while. The part where it's scanned for and attempt to recover bad sectors, if you're on a spinning hard drive and it finds that this is a bad part of your disk, maybe this whole part of your disk, something happened, fell over while it was running, the secret had hit there, and that section is bad of your disk. If you do a full disk check and it can't recover it, it's going to go and say to the operating system, don't use this anymore. And when it doesn't use it anymore, then Lane's PowerPoint doesn't get saved right here and then not work. Okay? It just doesn't use it anymore. So that's a good thing to do as well to troubleshoot our PCs. So I would probably do this first on your home PC, do a full scan, let it shut down. If you have a big hard drive, it can take hours. And then do a defragment. Because the last thing you want to do is to defragment your drive and have it put a bunch of really important files right here, where later on you find, I wish I hadn't written anything right there. Okay? So, and these are just hard drive troubleshooting things that you can do. When you get it back, it's going to give you some kind of error on how many bad sectors you have, and it's going to look something like that. I don't know what it looks like in Windows 10. Only that is fragmented. Let's see. I don't want to mess with that at the same time. Okay, your drive was successfully scanned. Windows 6, no errors were found. Show details. Let's see what it looks like in Windows 10. And check this. Here's my details. I got nothing other than that. Oh, there we go. This is the same information that it's just shown in a different way. So it processed 52,000 records, 0 bad records processed, and it's new. It shouldn't have a bunch of bad records. It says how many files were processed on there, and it says that there are no bad sectors on that drive, which is nice. I should have scanned that when I first put it in, but I didn't. But so scanning your hard drive is a good thing as well. I'm going to go ahead and close this, say okay this. I'm going to go ahead and defrag that anyway, just because. And we're almost done, by the way. I know this is a long one. Okay. So, common hard drive problems. We already talked about this one. Hard drive not found. We'll get the 3 things we can do. Invalid drive or drive specifications. If you see that, or a message that says something like that, it could still be a BIOS thing. If the drive specifications don't match what I think it's going to match, it could be because it's not set up right in BIOS. Or it could be that you've got the wrong drive selected as your operating system in BIOS. We see that a lot. This is the indication of a bad drive that I might be able to reformat and get back, but I generally can't repair a bad boot sector. If it can't boot from the hard drive, that is one that we just re-image it and rewrite the whole hard drive. When you guys come in and something's bad, we just pull your drive, put it in a new drive, and you move on. And then the last one, retrieves and saves data really slowly. It could just be really, really fragmented, and that's why it's doing that. Okay. When we're working in it, I already said this, we need to watch for sharp corners. Make sure that we don't touch anything inside the PC until the power is removed. We've pushed the power button for our 20 seconds to dissipate any power. We've touched the power supply to ground ourselves, and we talked about that early in the course. This is just a reminder. Ensure the PC is unplugged. Set the jumpers on the hard drive. We really don't have to do that anymore, right? Because we already said we're not going to do any PATA drives. Connect the hard drive, plug it in, check the BIOS, check for all other. I should take out this off, all devices, and then we'll normally boot from the Ultimate Boot CD and test the hard drive. We're going to do that next class. Okay. Last thing, if we do have a bad hard drive, we can get data from that test that we run to get a return on the hard drive. You know how many times people throw away hard drives that are still under warranty? Like they take a PC back to Best Buy that they just bought last year, and Best Buy says, your hard drive's bad, we can sell you a new hard drive for $200. And they go, okay. You just got hosed. Because if the PC is less than 3 years old, most likely the hard drive's under warranty. You can say, no thanks, send it back yourself, get the new hard drive, and then say, hey, you guys said my hard drive is bad, I got this replacement, and Best Buy may have to move your stuff over. Okay, but you need to get the error codes when you do that. In the case of my Samsung one, I had to send back a picture of the drive and all this junk in order to get RMA replacement on that one. I'll show you what that looked like, just so you can see. I'm gonna go to Gmail. When I did the replacement on that one, let's see if I can go to Samsung. Find it easily here. So I sent them the information. This is what they had to have back in order to get it. To do the RMA, they had to know my name, my address, my email, my phone number, my alternate phone number, the product number of the thing, the serial number of the thing, why I was returning it, SSD unresponsive, does not show in BIOS, troubleshooting checked, I put what I did. They wanted to know the specifications of the computer that I had it on, which was 7, now it's 10. And then they needed both the bill of sale and they wanted a picture of the hard drive. I guess, I don't really understand. They're not going to send me one until I send them one. What was the picture for? I don't know. To verify that I actually knew how to read the numbers that I put on the email. In which case, why did I have to give you the numbers that were on the email? Anyways, so I had to return that and a invoice showing that I bought it. It was purchased through eBay because it was a really good deal when I got it. But that was as good as I could do on invoice on that. So that's the kind of information I had to give them to return the thing. Okay, so that's it. Shoo, Mr. Poole. That was the whole. Now you did get 10 minutes off at the beginning. So next class, what are we doing? We're going to learn how to test hard drives. Next class, that's all we're doing. We're obviously going to learn how to replace them as well. And informationally, I just went through everything. Much of that you should be supplemented by the reading and videos you already watched. Okay. I didn't go through everything on seek and transfer rates, but I had you read a bunch of stuff on that, right? So I shouldn't have to go through every single thing. This is kind of a chapter review, but not for the rest of the class. But so our next class, it's going to be a shortened class. We're going to go to 210. We're going to learn how to test hard drives. We're going to test 210. And then the classes after that, we're going to try to go and test a bunch of hard drives. We're going to get both the labs done and then get a bunch of the elementary school computers tested as well in the morning. So really the next whole week, we're going to be testing drives. Okay? And then we'll do the project, and then we'll move on to the next chapter, which is really the end of third quarter almost. We have one other section before we start talking about buying PCs and repairing PCs in general, and that kind of brings all the sections that we've done together in one place. Okay, I'm going to stop this.